Ruth's story is one of loyalty, love, and faith, showcasing how God can bring amazing things from even the most difficult circumstances. To truly understand Ruth, we need to look at who she was, what she did, and how her actions reflect something greater that God was doing. Ruth was a Moabite woman, living in a time when Moabites were not part of God's chosen people, the Israelites. But Ruth's story begins with her connection to an Israelite family. Naomi, an Israelite woman, and her husband Elimelech moved to Moab during a famine. In Moab, their two sons married Moabite women, one of whom was Ruth. However, tragedy struck as Elimelech and his two sons died, leaving Naomi and her daughters-in-law as widows. In those days, being a widow was extremely difficult. Without a husband, women had little means to support themselves. Naomi, hearing that the famine in Israel had ended, decided to return to her homeland. She urged her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab and remarry, but Ruth made a choice that would change her life. She refused to leave Naomi, saying, "Where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God." This was more than just a declaration of loyalty to Naomi. It was a decision to follow the Lord and embrace the faith of the Israelites. When Ruth and Naomi arrived in Bethlehem, they were poor and needed food. Ruth decided to go out and glean in the fields. Gleaning was a practice where the poor could gather leftover grains after the harvesters had passed through. Ruth ended up in the fields of Boaz, a wealthy relative of Naomi's late husband. Boaz noticed Ruth and was impressed by her hard work and loyalty to Naomi. He made sure she was protected and provided for while she gleaned in his fields. Now, here's where things get even more amazing. Naomi realized that Boaz was a close relative and could act as a kinsman redeemer. In Israelite custom, a kinsman redeemer was a male relative who had the responsibility to help a family member in need, which could include marrying a widow to preserve the family line. Naomi instructed Ruth to approach Boaz and ask him to take on this role. Ruth did so, showing humility and respect. Boaz, who admired Ruth's character, agreed to redeem her, but there was another relative who had the first right to do so. Boaz went to this man, who ultimately declined, allowing Boaz to marry Ruth. This union wasn't just about preserving Naomi's family line. It had a greater purpose in God's plan. Ruth and Boaz's son Obed became the grandfather of King David, placing Ruth in the direct lineage of Jesus Christ. So how does this story relate to us, and what does it mean for believers today? Ruth's story shows that God's blessings and purposes are not limited by nationality, status, or past mistakes. Ruth, a Moabite and a widow, was grafted into the people of God through her faith and loyalty. In Ruth's actions, we can see a type of Christ. Just as Ruth showed steadfast love and loyalty to Naomi, Jesus shows steadfast love and loyalty to his people. Ruth's willingness to leave her old life behind and embrace a new one with God's people mirrors the call to follow Christ, leaving behind our old ways. Boaz, as the kinsman redeemer, also points to Jesus, who redeems us from our sins and brings us into God's family. To sum it up, Ruth's story is one of faith, redemption, and God's amazing ability to use anyone, regardless of their background, to fulfill his purposes. This story isn't just for those in the past, it's for everyone who is willing to trust in the Lord today. Ruth's journey from Moab to Bethlehem, from widowhood to becoming the great-grandmother of a king, is a powerful reminder that God is always working behind the scenes, turning even the most challenging circumstances into something amazing.